I was getting tired. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I was really getting tired of the whole racer deal. Now what happened is that these kids all started making some money. They all wanted more money. They were all asking for more money. And the companies were starting to fight over these guys. Well, I never liked that.
It was also a time when the pro drivers started to come into play, more paid drivers. Back in the early days, all the employees at Losi were our pro drivers. Kyle Reed, John Anderson, Ron Rossetti, Jack Johnson, Gil Losi Jr. That was our team. We paid for them to go to the events. They were employees pretty much, except for Ron Rossetti. And that was what we did. Well, I was in that time when the transition went to where, hey, let's get Kinwall and let's pay him a salary. And Trinity got involved and paid him a salary. And that's when salary started to come into play. But I mean, the reality was, it was a time that needed to happen. These guys were spending a lot of time away from home, and they needed a compensation. And so it was only a matter of time where that would come into play, where drivers were needing to get paid. I think that the old school mentality was not to do that. And one of my favorite stories was, I think it was '97. I'm terrible with the dates, but it was at the World Championships at the Ranch Pit Shop. We had the world's warm-up race. Masami came out, all these drivers came out. Associated had this monster team. We had a monster team as well, don't get me wrong. We had Kinwall, we had Greg Hodap and a few other drivers. And I remember we're out there running on the warm-up race, and Associated and Yokomo and Proline had something that we couldn't figure out, and they were just kicking our butts on the track. So we were racking our brains trying to find ways to get things going, and I can't remember what we figured out, but we got something dialed in, and all of a sudden we started going really fast. Well, we didn't want Associated to know that we'd figured it out. We wanted them to feel comfortable of where they were at, because they knew they were kicking our butt on the track. And so I remember, rest in peace, Brian Kinwall was out there running, and we had a code word. As soon as he would start clicking off killer lap times, I would say, hey, you need to pick up the pace, and he would automatically slow down. So it was Hodap, and I think Rick Howard was running first at the time, and Kinwall, and that's what I would say. Hey guys, pick up the pace. They automatically knew to back off, because I'd see the Associated guys come over to try and click lap times. And a decision was made, let's sandbag it. Let's let Associated feel like they are in control and have the worlds covered, and let's sandbag. And I think either it was Rick or Brian was our only car in the main event at the warm-up race for the Worlds. Back then, you had a big warm-up race at the venue, and everybody came out, and everybody ran it that way. And we got our butt kicked, 9 out of 10. What Associated didn't know was that we did that on purpose. And they still may not believe it, but it's a true story. Jack Johnson, myself, Pops, Junior, Kinwall, Hodap, we were all in a little meeting and say, look guys, let's not show what we got. I mean, I think we were like a half a second a lap faster what we figured out. And so we sandbagged. And Associated ended up doing an ad where they were 9 out of the 10 at the World warm-up. We've got them covered, we're crushing them, this and that. And then we get to the Worlds and Kinwall wins.
Championship in the 110 scale off-road for IFMAR, we have Brian Kinwall. World champion, right here, Brian.
Adam and I were living in the Midwest. He was in Michigan, I was in Ohio. There was, down in Columbus, you'd race nitro on Saturday indoor, and then indoor electric on Sunday. And Adam pretty much just took the bull by the horns, got a GTX and started racing it on the Saturdays, and was always racing gas truck. And then I remember when Gil Losi Jr., we were looking for another person to kind of come in and support the nitro side, because I was mainly focused on electric. And I said, hey, let's reach out to Adam. And I remember calling Adam up and asking him if he'd be interested in it. And he's like, I'd go work there even if I had to clean the toilets. So I mean, I think maybe within a couple months, Adam was out here living with us, and he had an apartment right around the corner from me. And yeah, the rest is history.
That's where it took off. Adam was our gas guy, and he really took to the gas. He was really a really fast electric driver, but it was like perfect timing for him. For some reason, gas clicked, and he jumped on that, and Adam Drake became Adam Drake. You know, the gas guy. You know, 8 scale, 10 scale. It just clicked for him.
Luckily, Adam was kind of the savior with that because he was so into preparation and preparing his stuff. I mean, to this day he still is, and it's why he probably still performs really well.
Before I went to work for Losi, I was racing like the XX buggies, XXT trucks, and then it would have been the GTX and NXT gas trucks. Like I just started kind of dabbling in the gas truck portion. It was kind of funny because it was like gas truck was almost kind of like the outcast for the serious racers. And I was traveling primarily to 10 scale races and trying to do my best in 10 scale. And then I was given the opportunity to do a little bit of gas truck, and it kind of clicked or worked well with me. I think just my preparation and mechanical ability, it worked out well and kind of, I guess, caught the interest of Junior. My first day of employment at Losi was actually the first day that Horizon officially took over ownership of Losi. It's kind of a funny story because so I had talked with Pops and Junior, get everything planned. I make this move. I drive out in a U-Haul truck with my Camaro on a trailer in the back, and I get to Losi Monday morning, first day of work, and go in and talk to Pops, and he's like, "Hey, I've got some news for you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool. What's up?" He was like, "I don't own the company anymore." And I'm thinking like, I haven't even unloaded my truck. Like, Camaro's still on the trailer. I'm like, so do I need to turn around and go home? Like, what's the deal? And he's like, no, this is going to be a good thing. I didn't think, you were so passionate about, you wanted to make the move out here. You were willing to do anything to come out here. I didn't want to spoil it and maybe ruin the chance of you coming out. So I wanted to wait to tell you until you got here. So he's like, but it's going to be a good thing. Don't worry about it. I knew that the gas truck was going to be part of my focus. Again, I still was heavily focused on 10 scale electric because that was kind of the bread and butter for Losi at the time. But the gas truck was also very big, and it was around the time where the XXXNT was getting ready to come out, and they needed someone to kind of help with the testing, the development, doing setups and things like that. So when Matt and Brian and some of these other 10 scale guys came to the major races, they had a little bit better like baseline to kind of start for the event.
Yeah, I remember when we were in Vegas, and he was sitting across the table. We were racing gas trucks, and he was changing springs, changing shock fluid constantly. I said, "How do you keep track of where you're at?" And he goes, "Well, I write everything down." And I said, "Really?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Your truck needs this and this and this." Really? I thought my truck was okay. He was right.
When we transitioned from like the GTX to the NXT, those gas trucks were more built for Horizon. This was when Losi was still separate from Horizon. Horizon wanted to have a gas truck that would compete with the associated truck. They had dynamite engines and accessories and things like that. So Losi put together this truck more for Horizon than kind of for their own competition or making it kind of what they wanted out of a gas truck. So when the XXXNT came around, this was, I would say, their first true attempt at a full, just all-out race vehicle. And they took a lot of things from the electric stuff, as far as the whole front end was pretty much the same, but from a testing and development side of things, like, we went all over the place. We tried 5-link rear suspension, steel chassis that were all pocketed and then lightened so that you had additional weight but super low. There were so many things. I mean, it's hard to think back because that was a long time ago, but it was just constantly trying to do anything that you could, to gain a tenth here or there, and then also to try to improve, durability and just experience for the end user. With developing the gas truck stuff, I mean, for me, I was learning as I went because, again, my main focus in my early days of racing was 10 scale electric. So for me, I was kind of learning as I went. I was spending tons of time at the track, whether it was trying to learn and develop tuning engines, clutch, improving durability, things like that. It was a learning curve for me, but it was also probably some of the funnest and also most challenging times because, I'm this young kid, I'm out in California, I'm going to the track all the time, come back, then I'm talking with Junior, talking with John Anderson in the machine shop and trying to make new parts or improve current parts. And I don't really have, I guess, a specific thing that I'm like, man, developing this part of the gas truck was like the most exciting, because for me it was all exciting. I went into it with like just open eyes, and Ron was almost like me, but twice as old. Like, he was super in the go on the track. He would go practice with me when he would get off work, and we would go to a lot of the smaller races together and just be able to put together a good package that we could then later put in the box.
So, that led us to kind of start doing RTRs. Horizon was pretty much hands off with us. Let us do our thing, make the race cars. The first RTR we did was the Team Losi Racing Triple XNT. That came with the Pico motor and the JR radio. And, all of those vehicles were built by me, Adam Drake, and Greg Hoodap.
The first run was, I believe, 1,000 trucks. And to us, in our head, we're thinking like, how is this possible? Like, there's no way we're going to be able to build 1,000 trucks. So kind of with the help of the team, we made a bunch of fixtures. Because when you think about it, like, even the most simple thing, like, at the time, the shocks didn't even have threaded shock bodies. They just had the little collars with the clamping collar. So you have to set 4,000 shock collars, and they have to be consistent. So it was a really, really cool experience now looking back on it, because it gave us the understanding and allowed us to kind of understand what went into building an RTR. One of the things that I specifically was in charge of was the Pico engines that we put into the trucks. So sealing the carburetors, adjusting the angle of the carburetor. The carburetors had a problem where the idle screw was misaligned with the barrel a little bit. So the carburetors had to be disassembled, and the barrel had to be ground slightly so that the idle screw would align. Hodap was in charge of cutting out all the bodies. Gary Kais and his kids painted all the bodies. So it was, again, looking back, a super, super cool project, but at the time it was pretty tedious and painful. And we also had other people helping. I remember specifically Tweety helping. She was like actually a super like big part of that, but I remember Greg like giving her such a hard time. She kept breaking the Allen bits. And so she would come to Greg, hey, can you get me a new tip? And we would have to get new tips. And then one day we were out of them, and Greg's like, Tweety, you keep breaking these. Like, these are expensive. What are you doing? So then she was scared. Like, she didn't want to go to Greg the next time she broke a tip. So Todd comes downstairs, and Tweety's on the ground, like on the floor of the warehouse with a tip, like trying to like grind a new hex head into the tip. And Todd's like, Tweety, what are you doing? And she's like scared, like she's thinking she's going to lose her job. She's like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And Todd's like, it's not a big deal. They're like a couple bucks. Like, let me go get you one. But it was because Greg kind of put the fear in her of like, like, you can't keep breaking these. Losi was the first to develop the quick change rear axles. And it was kind of funny because like, it's something we had talked about for a while, because if there was ever an opportunity where you could use quick change to your advantage, it was in gas truck. It was in the longer mains. So it was kind of dual purpose. For one, You could use the quick change to test tires faster. You didn't have to unscrew the tires, put them on, so you could run warm up. If you didn't like the tires, you could just change them and go right back out. And the first race that we ever raced with or used the quick change was in Florida for the Losi Winter Champs. And Tebow, Cavalieri, basically the whole associated team was there. Losi, we had our whole team there. And super high bite, blue groove style track. So you ran like a really small pin tire, the taper pin. And going into the final, it's a 45-minute final, all the associated guys are having to run these big, massive lugs, trying to have something that's going to survive 45 minutes, which even running the bigger, slower tire, there was a question of, is it going to last? Because the track was like sandpaper. So for me, I just mounted up a bunch of taper pins and you know, same tire we ran in qualifying. I knew I was going to have basically the same speed or lap times of qualifying in the final, but I was going to have a couple longer pit stops where we had to do the tire change. And it was funny because it got to where it kind of turned into like the whole Losi team was almost like a cheering section, because I was the only one, I believe, that even had it. I don't think at the time it was released yet. So this was kind of like the debut for it. And at the time, Billy Easton ran for Losi. He had just come from Associated. Kinwald was there, Francis, everyone. And it was kind of like this huge team effort, because I believe Matt was pitting for me. Kinwald like runs up on the stand and he's like talking to me. Billy Easton's down in pit lane, like cheering, his shirt's off, he's waving his towel. And like halfway through the race, it was pretty apparent that Cavalieri and Tebow's tires were done. Like they were fine still on the track, but they couldn't even come into pit lane because pit lane was like super dusty. It wasn't grooved up like the track. So they would like spin out, do donuts in pit lane, where I would come in every other pit stop. So basically every 15 minutes, throw new tires on, and it went from like it was kind of a battle to it wasn't even a race. Like, and again, you had Billy Easton down there like cheering and yelling. He's eating ice cream in the pits, and yeah, it was pretty epic. And then that forced Associated's hand. Actually, the very next race, Tebow his dad took a bunch of Losi quick change axles and hubs and parts, and then modified it onto his Associated truck. And then Associated later came out with it themselves.